Hello. How is everyone in Oslo today? I see so many, well, not faces, because all I can see is a bright light, but I'm assuming you're all smiling, yes? It has been such an incredible conference. First of all, I want to kind of just introduce myself so you kind of know a little bit about who I am. And if you are not familiar with me, I've done quite a lot in my life. I started out coding about 7 years ago, so I was a career changer. I came from the hospitality industry, where I spent 11 years saying, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. I got tired of that and decided I wanted to do something about the problem. After spending hours talking to the different tech helplines, I decided, I'm just going to start fixing these things myself, and then eventually got in trouble for that because that's not my job. And so they said, you should just go to school and try to learn about it. So that's pretty much what I did. I found a trade school, and then I started right away doing work directly for a very large company in the US that does taxes. Right? That was my very first internship. So I've never known anything but very large enterprise scale projects. I also enjoy speaking, and I'm a little bit of an entrepreneur. I do quite a bit of work in the equestrian industry, too, because Lord knows people who are used to spending all day outside with their animals need a little help when it comes to their data. And then on the side, I also do horseback archery. That's actually something that I've been pursuing for a while now, and my horse and I are going to Poland next year. And because I am also a nerd, fair warning, I've sung. If you do an internet search, not that you should, but if you do one, you will discover that I may have dressed up from somebody from Lord of the Rings, and I may have recorded a few albums in another language that doesn't really exist. I decided eventually to pull that off of Spotify because it didn't really bear well for the serious speaker. And then I'm also a semi-professional photographer. So if any of you all would like to have a picture afterwards, just come by our booth and I'll be happy to give you a free one. So after all of this, I still feel like a fake. A fraud, exactly. Isn't that interesting? I actually don't deserve to be here. It's interesting, when I got the invitation to come and speak here, I was filled with emotion because this is something that, if you talk to any of the speakers in the circuit, feel this is a fantastic conference. Do you not agree? Yeah. Yes, exactly. It is a status symbol to be able to get up in front of these brilliant Norwegian people and to be able to talk to them about all sorts of different technical things. So when I got the invitation, the first thing I thought of was, oh no, they chose me. Is that not hilarious? The problem is that 70% of us have experienced something like this in our life. And many people have this issue persist all the time. It is not just something that pops up every now and again when it's something that you don't know. So let's go over what the definition of imposter syndrome is, and whether or not it's even important. Is it a touchy-feely subject, or is it more scientific? Because I am a developer, I decided to pursue the latter. It was difficult for me to go through sessions with counselors because I wasn't really going deeply into psychology, and having them tell me, this is how you feel, but it shouldn't be that way. And that wasn't enough for me. I needed to know more because this terrified me to the point of where it completely affected my career. And I wanted to share that with you now. So I'll share a little bit of my story, some stories of others, what we can do about this, and if you do not suffer from this because you are in the majority, what you can do for someone that you do know that does. According to Wikipedia, imposter syndrome can be defined as a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist even in the face of information that indicates that the opposite is true, and it is experienced internally as chronic self-doubt and feelings of intellectual fraudulence. That sounds really serious when you put it that way. For me, it was very simple. I didn't experience anything that sounded that serious. I just froze, and I always felt badly for anything that I accomplished. Let's get into the science, shall we? Touchy-feely is fantastic on television, but I really wanted to know what the heck to do about it. According to a study that was done in Georgia State University in the fall of 1978, they kind of followed a bunch of women around who, despite their outstanding academic and professional accomplishments, persisted in believing they were not very bright and had fooled everybody else. And for imposters, success does not mean happiness. This is an important statement. I found this to be true in all walks of life, that you cannot actually enjoy what it is you're pursuing. Imposters often feel fear and stress and self-doubt and uncomfortable with their achievements. It interferes with your ability to accept and enjoy your achievements, and it has a negative impact on your psychological well-being as well. And when those women were faced with an achievement-related task, imposters often experience uncontrollable anxiety due to their fear of failure. And burnout, emotional exhaustion, loss of intrinsic motivation, all these things are reinforced by repetitions of this imposter cycle, specifically about having shame in your success. Now, this sounds like, oh, what a first world problem. I'm so sorry that you're successful. You don't feel it, right? It's different than that. So I came from an area that did not celebrate women doing anything in the field of science. But I found out very quickly that I wasn't alone. It wasn't just women that went through this. Actually, it was anyone that had difficulty having that support system and sometimes trying to live up to this ideology that they could never reach. So what does this cycle look like? I have a really pretty diagram to show you, right? So the way that it goes is kind of like this. You have an achievement-related task that you're set to do that you don't really know very well. So for me, that would be something in Node, because I'm a .NET developer, and God bless all of you JavaScript ones. And so let's pretend I have a client that I can't say no to, and I have to build something in like 2 weeks. So they said, okay, I need you to do this task, and I don't have the opportunity to say no, so I take it on. So because I've never done it, I almost pass out from thinking about the failure of it. I'm the kind of person who can't go to see a scary movie because I experience all the same fear that the characters do. And I have nightmares, reoccurring because of that. I feel everything. So I already was experiencing the failure before it even happened. Who's done that before? Exactly. That was more than half of you, right? So what do you do about this? After you worry, then you have a couple of options. Either you over-prepare and obsess over this, or you procrastinate to the last minute because you don't want to think about it, and you have to end up being up with your back against a wall and doing it anyway. In the case of this fictional client, right? Let's pretend that I over-prepared. I called up every single JavaScript developer I knew who is famous, and I'm like, Corey, tell me what I need to know about this. Tell me about React. What do I need to do? And then I just never sleep for the next 2 weeks, and everything becomes all about JavaScript. So I over-prepare, and then I end up accomplishing the task. You would think I would have this wonderful sense of relief, right? But while I have that feeling of, oh God, I made it barely to that deadline, I attribute it immediately to, well, it's because I stayed up for, 2 weeks straight and I knew all these super smart people that could help me with this. Therefore, actually, I didn't really make a miracle happen. Even though your client is telling you, that's amazing, and you didn't even know this language and you got this done, that's awesome. And I'm like, yeah, but I just know a lot of smart people. I mean, that's the reason why it happened. And so I start internalizing that, and it kind of goes a little deeper. Then it goes into, well, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be in tech. Man, that was a terrible feeling. I hated that. That was awful. Actually, I don't think I'm good at this at all. And then I get another achievement-related task, and this whole thing starts all over again. Or if you happened to attribute it to luck on the other side of that diagram, then you just said, oh, well, you know what? I waited until 3 days before, I found a template, got lucky, just happened to be exactly what I needed. So I got lucky there. The problem with luck is that it's not quantifiable. You can't say, okay, I got lucky this time and that time and that time. For some reason, in the mind of an imposter, we don't add any of that up. We don't look at reoccurrences. So this cycle continues and continues. Who knows somebody brilliant that you've talked to that when you say, good job, or that was great, or this is a brilliant piece of code, discounted it immediately? Yeah. So what does that mean? is this really a big deal? Am I making it out to be a big deal? I'm probably just really emotional. That's the reason that I'm talking about this, right? But to somebody who has lots of confidence, this can sound kind of silly. Like, oh, boo-hoo, sorry that you actually got your deadline done. You know, it does sound like I'm just trying to pull for attention, but it's not that at all. The fundamental cause of trouble in the world today is that the stupid are sure, while the intelligent are full of doubt. It is very, very true. And to illustrate this, I found another little drawing. Feelings versus reality. Let's go over that, shall we? So, how good you think you are is not necessarily always how good you really are. You need to fall in a healthy place on the spectrum, preferably in the middle. But let's talk about what it means to be on the opposite end. The Dunning-Kruger effect. Has anyone heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? Ah, nice. Okay, so for a bit of you, right? I like to describe this person as Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. He's just like, yes, I'm amazing. In fact, I'll sing my own song. Thank you very much. Right? That's that person who says, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and you really should just let me architect it. Right? You just let me do it. You should just listen to what I say because I'm amazing. They may not say they're amazing, but they're kind of intimating it. Right? That is somebody who maybe isn't that great at all, but has overwhelming confidence to do so. This is very prevalent in sales. So, I mean, it is true. But strangely enough, it's very prevalent on Stack Overflow, too. And you just got to be careful that some people are really just talking to hear themselves talk and not necessarily to help you out. That's really what they're there for. Not everyone, of course. But that's kind of the definition of somebody who really has that, is that they're not as good as they say they are, okay? So then you go on the opposite end of the spectrum where I fall, personally, which is an imposter, because I might be really good, but I really know how much I don't know. So I refuse to even look at how far I've come. But is that a big deal? Like, why? Sometimes people confuse us with humble bragging. Has anybody ever heard of humble bragging? Yeah, yes, several, right? It's actually considered quite rude in many countries to go into it a little too much, right? Saying, oh, no, it's not me, thank you, but no. If you go into it too much, it just looks like you're pretending to be down to earth. But that's not what happens here. I actually get a lump in my throat when somebody gives me a compliment. I got one yesterday. And even here, it still comes back. And they're like, oh, you're really on your way to wherever you want to go in software. You could probably carve your own path. And I was just like, yeah, and then I could fall on my face tomorrow. That's how I felt. But instead of voicing that, I've learned to say thank you. That is very difficult. You know why? Because if you say thank you, that means that you are agreeing with the person that just gave you that compliment, right? But they don't view it that way. They view it as, thank you for taking the time to give me the compliment, right? So our perspective is completely different, and we need to change that. So are you an imposter? Possibly. If you feel like a fake, or you attribute any of your success to luck, and you discount your level of success when you reflect upon what you've done, then probably yes. So who's affected by this? And what is it exactly? So before we get into who's affected, let me define this for you. I am not a psychologist. I don't even play one on TV. I just read Google, and I find some credible psychology papers that back up the things that I was looking into, right? What I have discovered is that this is not an actual illness. This is not a mental health issue. This is a state of mind, and you can change it. Very important differentiation. So let's go into who's affected. According to Amy Cuddy, who's a fantastic TED Talk speaker, over 50% of the people who contacted her after one of her most famous TED Talks were actually men talking about how they do have this. So it isn't, and especially in our industry, who can keep up? We have these amazing rock stars who teach us, maybe at this very conference. And you're like, how can I ever measure up to this person who makes it sound so easy? When they say, oh, it's easy. You just do this and carry the 9, and then and here's your neural network. And you're like, thank you. Okay. So what ends up happening is you feel stupid, right? Because you didn't get that. You're not stupid for something you don't know. But yet that's how you internalize it, right? Instead of just going, wow, that is such a cool new concept, you go, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's exactly what happens. So when you experience that first, then it just kind of drives it home. I actually know many men who go through this as well. So while the original study was based around why women will wait until they feel 110% qualified to ask for that promotion or ask for that raise or ask for that position, they said, oh, men aren't like that. But actually in software, I find that everyone's like this, that a lot of people wait until they really feel like they can really do it. People are going to think whatever they want to about me, and there's nothing I can do about it, right? This is a statement based on a brand new study that just came out recently, right in around the mental health of minority students. So this came out in March of 2017 at the Journal of Counseling Psychology. And the direct quote I took from it was that the imposter phenomenon in some cases can even degrade their mental health who already perceive prejudices against them, not that they were given, but that they could be given. So let's pretend I'm a minority. I am not currently, but let's pretend that I was. That means that I'm going to assume that because perhaps I'm Hispanic, that even though I am getting straight A's, maybe A+, I am not missing anything on my tests in college, I know that people still perceive me as somebody who won't make anything of her life. Because traditionally speaking, this is the way people perceive maybe somebody in Latin America or, historically, right? So if I assume that a prejudice is already being taken, I actually talk myself out of doing well. And in fact, half of these students who were beyond stellar ended up pulling out of school because they just couldn't take the pressure, even though they were completely outperforming everyone else. That's pretty fascinating to me. So even though the prejudice wasn't even given by a classmate, it was the perception that it would be. That means that this problem rests with you, to a point. Now, there are a lot of things in the world that are put upon us by others, but in this case, the proof was that they were excelling. It was on paper. They were even praised by their teachers and still were like, yeah, but nobody will take me seriously. And I mean, they'll never think about me as anything but this. So I just can't even handle this anymore. Isn't that interesting? Is it just happening there? Not at all. So there are some credible people out in the world that also suffer from this. Dr. Margaret Chan has a fantastic quote about, there are a lot of people that think I'm an expert, right? I'm so much aware of all the things I don't know. I paraphrased that early. It's, this woman does everything for the World Health Organization. She's amazing. She has done so much, and yet she cannot take a compliment for the life of her. Albert Einstein as well. The exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me very ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler. It also happens in the celebrity circuit. This is actually the first time I stumbled upon this phenomenon was of this guy next. At any time, I still expect that the no-talent police will come and arrest me. I mean, I love Mike Myers, and so for me, I was like, really? Oh, surely that he's just humble bragging, right? Surely he doesn't really believe that. But no, it's true. He actually suffers from it greatly, and his family has had to really support him through this. Even Ricky Gervais. The best advice I've ever received is no one else knows what they're doing either. I think that's true, actually. I love the answer of, I'm not smart, I'm just curious and damned persistent. So, okay, that's a good way of looking at it. And this made him comfortable to enter into the comedy scene. My favorite story, though, is from Will Smith. I still doubt myself every single day. What people believe is my self-confidence is actually my reaction to fear. When he was on set, Will Smith used to play pranks on people just to try to get his nervous energy out. He was so terrified that everybody would discount him one day and that he'd never really make it, that he decided in the meantime he was just going to play jokes on everyone. It actually ended up making the cast and crew love him even more, and he got even more support. But they all just thought that he was this confident guy running around putting whoopee cushions on stools, like they thought that that's who he was. But really, he was so he was just so frightened because it was Hollywood. It's a big place where everybody just goes through this turnstile, right? They go in and they go out. They're in the light and they're gone. That's how he dealt with it. And he does even now. Authors also go through this. There's so many different people that have great insight, but I wanted to pull a couple out that I really love their work. If you find yourself asking yourself and your friends, am I really a writer? Am I really an artist? Chances are that you are. The counterfeit innovator is wildly self-confident, and the real one is scared to death. Stephen Pressfield wrote a fantastic book called The War of Art, and I would highly recommend that you read it. It absolutely pertains to us as software engineers, because what we do, regardless of how logical we are, is artistic. I feel like we are the greatest combination of the left and the right brain. We get the opportunity to do both. So his book deals with how you overcome that mental block of, I don't know what to write, or in our case, I don't know how to code this. I'm not sure that I'm going to do anything inspiring or really great. I think I need to follow someone else's work before coming up with my own. It's really difficult to break out of that. I'm just going to follow whatever framework everybody else is using versus I'm going to think for myself and maybe come up with my own strategy. So that's a great book for that. And Neil Gaiman, I'm sure many of you are familiar with him. The first problem of any kind of even limited success is the unshakable conviction that you are getting away with something and that at any moment now they will discover you. My goodness. And even Maya Angelou. She's written 11 books, but every time she thinks they're going to figure me out, and I run a game on everyone. One of the most celebrated authors of all time. It even creeps into our tech, right? So I knew a lot about the celebrities, but I wasn't sure if anybody in our space that I'd be familiar with was going through this, and if they were, would they ever admit it? I mean, why would you add fuel to the fire, right? But sure enough, Sheryl Sandberg said that there are still days that she feels like she's a fraud when she wakes up and she's not sure she should be there. You know, the person who helps Mark Zuckerberg run Facebook, and still does to this day, still feels like she's not sure that she should be there, and yet she has brought so much of a cultural shift for them to where the focus is on caring for their employees. Richard Campbell. I've made a lot of mistakes. Most intelligence comes from failure. So that is the way that he deals with those feelings. And of course, Scott Hanselman. I feel like a phony sometimes. Sometimes I joke, hey, it's a good day, my badge still works. Or I answer, how are you with, well, I'm still working. Which is amazing to me, because this is arguably one of the most celebrated speakers that we have in our circuit. And yet, he actually had it pretty bad for a while, and hopefully it's getting better. So again, we're going to go back to this, is this healthy concern or logical doubt? This is the moment where I say, okay, do I really not know this? It's okay to not know something. Or do I know this and I'm just worried for nothing? This is where you have to bring in an outside perspective because you're not going to get there on your own. Again, I even paused about, should I talk about this to software engineers? Because I would much rather talk to them about natural language processing or mobile development, because that's what I do, right? Why would they listen to me about a touchy-feely subject? But because I actually am qualified because I've gone through this, and I am a recovering imposter. So I figured I might as well try to share it. So that required other people to be pulled in, and many of the speakers who knew me had to really counsel me on, it's all right to share. As C.S. Lewis put it, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Take that with you. What is the difference between insecurity and humility? If you feel humbled and stunned by the world around you, then it's probably a sign you should embrace what you don't know. The way that I look at this is that I run towards something that scares me. Which sounds crazy. It sounds like something that way back in the day the Scots would do, right? There's danger, let's go, right? But that's actually what I do now. I'm like, oh, I know nothing about that particular framework. I should probably learn it then. I mean, that is how I feel because it makes me uncomfortable that I don't understand it. So is this detrimental to your career? It might be something that you struggle with personally, but is anybody else affected by this? I mean, is it outwardly something that will impact you? Not too long ago, actually, when this was at the height of imposterism, I actually thought that I could do something without asking for help. I was there to prove myself because I just got a senior title, and I'm like, okay, I'm a senior now. It's serious business. I have to do all the things. And so I said, yes, I can do this thing. I actually had no idea how to do it, and the more I looked into it, the deeper of a hole it was. I realized I had left in my education. So I do not have a degree. And to solve this problem, you had to have a little bit more advanced mathematics that I didn't have. And so instead of asking for help, I just decided to go through the Google hole and just try to look up stuff, but really that doesn't make up for time. And so instead of informing my employer, I took that entire 2 weeks to try and learn just enough to get by. And I did not deliver something that was crucial to our project on time. Actually, the day before, my manager checked in with me and he's like, "Are you done with this?" And I said, "Actually, do you know anything about this?" And he was like, "Oh, no. Okay." So he had to come in with a bunch of other engineers and work on that. And we missed the deadline anyway. So they let me go because I didn't ask for help. And I held it all in. I had petrified myself. I wasn't able to work. I wasn't able to think clearly. I had to try to do all of it, and therefore I couldn't think at all. So because of this, I was convinced that I should go back to doing hospitality like I did before. I mean, even though I had made it all the way to a senior engineer. This didn't happen to me when I was young. This didn't happen to me when I was a junior. This happened to me as a senior person at a Fortune 500 company. That is a big deal. That's a lot of responsibility, and I felt like I let myself and every other girl who tries to do tech down. I did. I felt that way. And because of that, I felt an obligation to share it because I was so convinced that I couldn't do it that I didn't do it. I literally made what I imagined in my brain come true. I manifested my own thoughts. That sounds really deep, but it's true. If you believe something about yourself, it comes to fruition. It's all based around fear, right? So fear can utterly dominate our behavior. It stops us thinking and helping and learning, discovering and sharing, and all the things that we need in abundance because fear is the mind killer. So what do we do about this? What do I do about this? Here I am, kind of knee-deep in an industry that I love, but for some reason felt like I could never rise to, right? I was told to fake it till you make it. That sort of doesn't work in software engineering because you can't pretend that you know a language you don't. It's just too easy to expose. But that's not really what that statement means. I kind of hate it. I don't really like the way that that is expressed at all. And Amy Cuddy puts it so much better. She says, you should fake it until you become it. What that really means is that you should surround yourself with that topic or with those people that know those things and just be like, you know what? This is what they're doing. I'm going to do it too. And then along the way, you discover that actually you are also doing it. It kind of sneaks up on you. Suddenly, actually, you do know how to solve that problem. You're not just with the people who know how to solve it. Because remember, every one of us are in various stages of not knowing what we are doing. And anybody who tells you that they are accomplished and there isn't really much left for them to learn, I beg to differ. I bet there's something that a junior developer that comes in knows that you don't know. I mean, by virtue of the fact that you are at a conference means you are in the top 10% of developers who want to further their career. It is true. It is factual. So that means you care more, right? So imagine your surprise when somebody comes in who is a career changer, maybe at the age of 55, and who actually just spent a little bit of time looking up something on Big O notation, and you forgot about that years ago. You know? We can all learn from each other. So let's convert that curiosity that we have about a subject into confidence. That's the way I like to think now, is that I have to convert it. Instead of being like, oh, I wish I knew that, then it can be like, it'll be great when I know that. That's the way I kind of look at it. We need to interpret fear as excitement. I actually posted about this earlier. I'm like, I'm at Oslo. I'm excited. That's the word. I am excited. I can't say that I'm nervous. I'm excited because you can actually reprogram your brain to interpret it that way. We have limited amount of cognitive cycles to use, so use them wisely. It's good to know what you don't know. But find a mentor in your field. Do not be afraid to go up to them. I promise you they'll be flattered. Please just go up and say, you know all the things. Please teach me one. Can you just look at one thing I do? I know you're busy, but please teach me one, or can you show me somebody who will? I promise that kind of question is usually rewarded. And speak confidently that you don't know yet, but you will. That's the way that I've been able to survive and continue to grow in this industry. Don't compare yourself to other people. I just had to throw that up there. We all know not to do it, but we all do it. And by being able to identify these feelings and recognizing them for what they are, Marianne Pasha, who's also another TED speaker, has been able to know that they are just feelings and not facts. Because remember, the story you are telling yourself about your competence or incompetence is all invented. So now, with that kind of approach, I guess that means I can just leave and be confident that I can overcome this, right? Just get better. Just believe in yourself, right? Just believe in yourself. You'll be better. You'll be great. And I can walk away. It doesn't work very well for reprogramming. You can't just hope that your poorly written code will someday execute better. You have to rewrite your brain. And the only way that I have found to rewrite it is to study successful people that don't have this issue and how they respond to the same scenarios. Because if this is not an illness and it's a state of mind, then how do I reprogram my mind to be in a different state? So I found some people at my work that were, by everybody's accounts, very successful at their jobs. Everybody loved them, and they seemed to have confidence, and they didn't have the kind of unshakable fear I did. So I decided to interview them to kind of get a little bit of perspective. Karen is a BA analyst, and Brad is project manager. Heather is in charge of a lot of search engine optimizations, and Preston is an agile coach. So because, they just exude confidence but generosity and a genuine love for everything they do. So I asked them questions like, how do you approach having to deliver something you've never done before? Karen said that the first step would be to get with somebody who does know, right? Brad's suggestion was to ask for an appropriate discovery time and pad your estimates. Heather said to be transparent so you don't offer to hit a bar you can't reach quickly, which was my problem. And Preston said to try not to make commitments to set yourself up for failure. So these are people, again, who generally don't get things wrong, okay? But this is how they do approach these kinds of problems. So I said, well, are you human? Do you make mistakes? Do you have a memorable mistake that led to your growth? Karen released a bug into production and didn't catch it. What she fails to mention in what I captured here is that it was a very important piece of production code that affected people's bank accounts. So that was kind of a big deal. And remember, she's a celebrated analyst and done a lot with QA. Brad accidentally deleted years worth of database records, as we've heard lots of stories last night of something similar. And I'm sure, I need to know, has anybody in this audience never deleted a database record by accident? Ha! See? We have all screwed up. Right. Heather thought she could do everything on a project and failed. Also was my issue. Kind of interesting we have the same name. And Preston didn't pay attention to the signs of an unrecoverable situation, and it got him burned. More particularly, he didn't pay attention to the fact that his team was struggling. That actually happens a lot in management. Sometimes you just don't notice that your team is having a hard time, and instead of helping them and seeing if we can get to the root of the problem, they usually end up pushing them instead, and the whole thing fell apart. So what kept them going after a major failure? Karen said, even if you fail, things still need to get done. She kind of sounds like my mom, but it's true. Whether or not you're having a confidence crisis, we still have to push that code. It still has to happen. So pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It still does need to happen. And Brad said to remember that everything you do is just a tiny drop in the bucket of life. And Heather just has a stubbornness to not quit. She says she constantly has something to prove. I liked Preston's answer the best, though, because he said that failing at something does not mean that you are a failure. It is the ultimate learning experience. So that's great. Those are peers. Those are people kind of on my level. So I wanted to ask somebody who would be in charge of hiring developers or in charge of a company and ask them more about that. So what do you guys think? John was an architect on a project of mine, and he said that you need to do everything you can to become the expert, even if you don't feel you're ever going to reach it. Just try anyway. Let it drive you and find the joy in discovering. This is so important. Here's a scenario. Here's a software engineer who goes, oh no, I've got to find that datetime parser. And oh God, I hate this. And I have to go look for it and it's just stressing me out. Versus, oh, awesome, I get to learn something new. Where it's all about the datetime parsing. Datetime parsing, awesome. Oh, did you know this about datetime parsing? They're doing the same job with just different perspectives. And that is what has gotten him to where he's at. And he said that that is like the magic key. If you can find the joy in discovering, it will completely sustain you through whatever happens. Debbie says that you need to have a level of fearlessness to do what we do, which is true. More than anything, you have to listen to others and realize that people do want you to succeed. This is actually a piece of advice I had when I did my first talk. I'm like, you realize these people are giving an hour of their life to you, and they really want you to be good. They want you to succeed. They want to know what you have to say that could be of value to them. Remember, they're on your side. And our CEO said that there's a fine line between humility and lack of confidence and pride. If you think it's luck, you will stop being able to repeat your success. That was kind of a big eye-opener for me. So I like repeating my success. I like writing my code once and not repeating it everywhere. All right? That's how I feel. But it's kind of the reverse, though, in your career. We want to repeat the things that we're doing well and then continue to grow from them. But if you say, oh, I just got lucky, oh, this person showed up just in the nick of time, then you're never going to be able to structure it and set yourself up for success at all. So I also asked, how can you tell if somebody who fails has the potential to ultimately succeed? So this is the, I have a direct report question. Is your direct report a good direct report? Is your junior developer a good junior developer, right? That question will come up. And that's what I basically was asking. How do you know if that person really has this in them or just software is not for you? How do you know? John believes that nobody's useless, and everybody can have a role in the project, and the people he knows that will succeed will own up to their failed attempts and are relentless in their pursuit. The CEO said that an attitude of positivity and ability to visualize success is what gives them that potential. Good leaders can see the eventual positive outcome in a person, and he looks for someone who does not remain frozen by their failure. When he said that to me, I said, you realize the reason that I was dismissed from this place I worked like many moons ago was because I was frozen by that failure. And he says, really, I would not have thought that about you, Heather. And I said, right, because I'm changing my nervous energy into excitement, which is why I'm the person who has lots of big arm movements and I jump around the stage, is because I am genuinely excited to be here. But that is my way of not remaining immobile. It's the mind killer. So based on all of this kind of research that I did in my own little sample group, I kind of came to the conclusion that the reason that I do not feel confident is because I'm aware of all the things I don't know. So if you're aware of all the things you don't know, and more new things keep coming out every month if you're in JavaScript, and you're like, what thing do I learn? I don't have enough time, and it's just overwhelming. Everybody says in this industry, if you talk to some pretty well-known people, it doesn't really matter what new framework or language comes out. What matters is the basics. What matters is your problem solving. And if you have holes in those areas, there is something that you can do about that. So Rob Connery came out with a book recently called The Imposter's Handbook. And it's actually a little bit of a primer on what software developers are supposed to kind of know. Okay? This is a great book. I've read it the several iterations in beta, and now it's available to you. I didn't actually know a whole lot about big O notation because I just never had to touch it before, right? And I got to learn about that in this book. And he didn't have a degree either, and he decided that he would plug all the holes and take us along for the ride. And so it's actually a very well laid out book, and if you're interested in the things that you think you're missing that will transcend every generation of software development that you do, This is an excellent book to get started. So the next image is something I actually print out and I take with me to different clients. Because it's true, I have to not be afraid of asking that question. I cannot be afraid of stepping on toes. I can't be afraid of any of it. I just have to be afraid of not finding the truth of the situation. Even if that means that the situation is kind of uncomfortable, especially when it comes to a really bad code base. And you're like, well, I think this is bad code. I think there's a smell here. But these people probably know more than me, and so, I mean, who am I to judge? I probably just don't know brilliant code when I see it, you know? I mean, maybe that's what it is. This is something that I run into regularly, especially as I go and I kind of scan what other people are doing. I find reading other people's code bases fantastic and terrifying, because you learn so much about the people and their state of mind when they wrote it. Were they in a rush? Usually, yes. What was important to that developer? I love finding out the person who's naming they just spent hours on naming, because naming is important and it's hard. But they didn't really spend a whole lot of time on these nested for loops that are about 17 layers deep. Then there's the people who think, I'm going to be terribly clever with my code so you can never decipher what I'm doing. I mean, I like being able to tell the personality of the person based on what they write. I think that's kind of awesome. But then it's the whole, yeah, can you fix that like tomorrow? That's where I become a little terrified. But as long as I find the truth of the situation, whether I can be the one to fix it or not, if I tell that truth to my clients or to whoever else it is that I was being brought in to do, I actually find that it disarms them. Instead of saying, oh yeah, I can fix it, I just go, wow, there's just a lot here. So I'm not sure. I know that this part looks puzzling, we're going to use that word. And I mean, I can do this much, but I'm not sure about this. So how about you give me time to do that, and I'll give you updates as I go. That's really honest. That's the truth of the situation. I find that everybody responds to that at every level much better than false confidence. So let's shift our focus. Team up with a friend or a partner at work that can talk up your skills and call out your achievements for you, and then you can do the same in return. This is called co-bragging, and it absolutely works. A good example of this is probably when I first started doing anything around AI. I was so interested in it that I found the people who did it, and I would just remind them how much I learned from them, and they really are impressive. But because it is a growing field, and we're discovering new things all the time that we can do, they'd be like, oh, I mean, I'm just learning and passing on as I go. I'm like, yeah, but you make an impact on me, so thank you. That's a lot of value. And then in reverse, they'd be like, you know, I love how persistent that you are. And while this all sounds like we're just trying to be nice to each other, you're actually rewiring each other's brains to be comfortable and open with each other. So in order to get encouragement, you have to give it. And you have to give it first. You have to do it first. This can actually change your entire culture at work. So if you have a not so happy environment and everybody's kind of shows up for work but isn't happy, if you start this cycle, you can radically change your culture without involving the management of your company at all. This can just be you guys that can completely change this. A good way to look at this is when we have a catastrophic failure as a team. We have to start picking out things that we actually did well in it and start encouraging that cycle. So be kind to yourself. The technology world is very hard on us. Luck only gets you so far, and you were the one that acted on the opportunities you were presented. I can't stress that part enough. You are where you are because you chose to say yes. You chose to trade some of hours of your time for money, or just trade hours of your time for the love and the pursuit of it as a side project, right? You chose to take that and run with it. It wasn't luck. Lots of opportunities pass people by, and their life never changes. You may not be able to determine when those opportunities will come, but you're absolutely in charge of whether or not you grasp them. And in our industry, there is no reason not to grab an opportunity by the horns and run with it. The world needs us, so even if it doesn't work out, chances of you getting another job in 24 hours is pretty good. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Remember that you're not an imposter for trying something that might not work. You are a hero. I know that sounds big and enormous, but it's true. So the solution that you need to take home today is that you need to discover how to be self-aware and recognize those emotions. Update your view of failure as an intense growth opportunity and fake it until you become it and pay it forward. So if you are a person that maybe doesn't experience this, but you know someone who does, maybe a friend, a colleague, a family member, what do you do about this? Do you just say, hey, here's a slide deck I saw at NDC, you should look at it? Like, I mean, that's kind of rough, right? Remember that cycle that I talked about earlier. You need to give encouragement to get encouragement. Imposters will be the hardest to break through. But if you give them opportunities and constant invitations to just be part of whatever you're doing, whether it's have a seat at our table, and this goes all the way down to high school, have lunch with us, or maybe you should just try looking at some new things that, will put you at the same level as everyone else. That's actually how I was able to tell myself that it's okay for me to charge for my services now, because everybody learned about this particular new technology at the same time. So, right, I've got just as much experience in this new tech as everyone else. Not to discount years and years of experience, but it should never hold you back from being able to achieve what you need to do. You don't have to attain perfection or mastery to be worthy of the success that you have achieved. So if you take nothing else away from today, I want you to take this. And remember that this also applies to the person that you make fun of, to the person that you put down, the one that you don't understand. You have no idea what they're going through. And I'm not trying to make all of us be mushy at the end of this talk, but it's true. You don't know why the person that you're working with that is intolerable is the way they are. So if you start with the encouragement, at the very least, you'll break down a wall. Even if it's somebody who's mountains higher than where you're at, just say, hey, I really appreciated this, or you really did a great job at this, even if they know that. It's okay. It breaks down walls. Maybe you should try it sometime, and then maybe we won't have such a toxic environment where we're all petrified to succeed because we're too busy trying to be like the best one in the room. Thank you.